All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Andy Nowinski. I'm the analyst at D.A. Davidson covering the cybersecurity sector. And today it's my pleasure to introduce you to the WISeKey management team. WISeKey is traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker WKEY, WKey. And today we have Carlos Moreira, Chief Executive Officer, and Peter Ward, the Chief Financial Officer. Yep. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. So you are based in Switzerland, and so yesterday you hosted your earnings call discussing the first half of the year results. Maybe if you could just start, for those that missed the call yesterday, maybe if you could just start by giving us a brief overview of WISeKey and the value proposition, and maybe what's changed over the last 12 months, because I know a lot of things have changed.
Yeah, so thank you, Andy. Pleasure to be with you. So WISeKey started as a cybersecurity company. So we were one of the early companies entering into the cybersecurity space. We then started to diversify as we introduced our cybersecurity into objects, mobile phones, camera, drones, alarm systems, and also strong authentication of people, everything related to identity management, KYC compliance for financial sector. So the cryptographic capabilities of WISeKey are internationally recognized, or cryptographic root key, which is the ground zero on the internet. It's already downloaded 3.6 billion times through browsers, through OS, and so on. And in the last year, WISeKey has been very much focused on what we call the platform effect, means to produce an end-to-end solution for our customers. So when they enter into the WISeKey ecosystem, we can secure them without the need to leave that ecosystem. So that's been the major focus. We have very interesting clients representing many different sectors, like drone sectors, like robotics, like jewelry, like industrial companies, that they are using our security and know-how to basically secure their processes. The big thing happening this year, which was not there before, is the inclusion of artificial intelligence into all this, as we generate a lot of data. And data, as you know, is the oil of the digital economy, right? So these sensors that we have 1.6 billion sensors already being sold. So that means that we have 1.6 billion objects already secured by WISeKey. Those sensors are sending us data on real time. Before, we didn't do anything with that data, just to communicate to our clients. Now we can help them to analyze that data and to put value in that data. And this has been a major breakthrough during this year.
Great. And before we move on, if anyone that's listening into the call today has any questions that you'd like to ask management, feel free to email your questions to me at anowinski@dadco.com. That's ANOWINSKI@DADCO.com. Or you can post them in the chat, and I'd be happy to, I'm monitoring that as well, and I'll weave them into the conversation. All right, so next, Carlos, maybe, for some companies, COVID has certainly served as a positive catalyst for revenue growth, with more employees working remotely. And for other companies, it's created some headwinds. And I know some of the customers that you have, particularly in, maybe some of the, luxury subsectors have been harder hit by COVID. So could you just talk about how COVID has overall impacted WISeKey, whether positive, negative, or both?
Absolutely. Actually, it has been on both. On the positive side, identity management, digital identity has become well recognized as digital identity is one of the tools that we need to fight COVID in terms of providing digital identity to people, processes, and they are taking check analysis and are getting their results. They need that digital identity to secure their privacy and to enter into this kind of digital health ecosystem, and is growing worldwide. So on that aspect, and this has been recognized lately, the digital identity boom is happening thanks to the COVID, and we are a digital identity company. The other side is the objects itself, all these test devices need to be secure, need to be authenticated, because a lot of counterfeiting on this. It's a lot of non-approved devices that they're entering into the market. So we are putting now microchips into the devices, and we are peer with mobile phones. We are doing something here in Switzerland, and this is going to be done in many other countries. And that has an amazing advantage, is that by peering your testing device with the mobile phone of the person, you can check that the data comes from the authenticated source, and that there's not being manipulation of the data, while we maintain anonymous the identity of the person, which is a major issue now on those health passports and being issued. So WISeKey is entering big time into the what we call the COVID economy, which is being using our cybersecurity and identity and microchips to secure all this process of traceability that is required for that function. The negative side is delaying our revenue. Some of our revenue comes from sectors that they had been hardly touched through the COVID, not necessarily us as a company, but our clients. And one example is the luxury world, the watches. WISeKey secures already 1 million watches in Switzerland. We provide digital authentication for watches. As you know, people during COVID did not buy as many watches as they used to buy before COVID. So this does affect the industry. Altogether, Switzerland produces 25 million watches, but obviously many other countries around the world were there in the same situation, including Japan. So, I mean, this obviously had an impact in revenue. We lost some of the revenue during the first 6 months. We will likely recover that revenue, because it's not because you didn't bought a watch during the COVID lockdown because you were not maybe available to go to the shop and buy. I mean, obviously you're gonna just defer that decision to acquire the product to a later stage. So that revenue will come back later. And as I mentioned before, this is accelerating because digital identity is accelerating, and 1 trillion objects are getting connected to the internet. So you need to authenticate all that, and WISeKey has the technology for it.
Understood. Thank you. So now I want to shift gears and talk about some of the ways you monetize your platform, some of the bigger areas. And you've made a number of very interesting announcements over the last even really 3 months. And I'll start with the first one I want to talk about was Parrot, the maker of drones. So you're selling, if I understand it correctly, you're selling the microchip and the software that monitors that chip. And that chip gets embedded in the controls of the drone. Maybe if you could just talk about the announcement you made with Parrot, and how they're using WISeKey.
Absolutely, that's actually a very interesting project. We have been obviously doing this kind of machine identity connected with a person identity in many other sectors, like automobile sector with Daimler. We announced that last year. We have been doing that with battery companies, with routers company. But this case of Parrot is an interesting one, because what we are realizing that these drones are now starting to be used by defense, by police, by organizations that they need to use those drones for surveillance purposes, controlling airspace, observing behavior in critical situations, and obviously maintaining 100% control on that device is essential, because if somebody loses the control of the device obviously could do harm. So the new philosophy of these companies, before these companies like Parrot, they were only focusing on the device itself, securing the object, but they were less concerned of the communication of the object with their platform. That was not really the main issue. Now they are becoming like a platform. They want their objects to be sending data real time to them first, being able to reduce the scope of action of that object. Let's say a drone cannot fly on an airport zone, so you need to control that process. They want to encrypt the data because somebody could hack the data between the drone and the platform. So all this communication between drone and platform, they are guaranteed by the machine identity that we issue on the device, and we also have as a peer on the platform. And this is going to be a trend. I mean, this is only an example of video cameras now doing the same function. Video cameras are now sending encrypted data to command centers. We are talking about pharmaceutical products that they are now talking directly with the producers of the product, because they want to have in real-time data on how that product is being used. So this Internet of Things is applying all the sectors. Drones is very exciting, obviously, because there have been some issues, defense concern, even national security concern in the drone space in the United States. Parts is a French company. We are a Swiss company, so it is a good trust model. As you know, Europe is very concerned and very serious about GDPR and data protection, eIDAS, and all those things that we have embedded into our technology. So, I mean, you're more safe using WISeKey and Parrot than you will be eventually using a Chinese or somebody else drone manufacturer.
That's interesting. Thank you. So it sounds like, Parrot may be one of the first use cases of this, but any device that's sending data back, especially data that's encrypted, would be an applicable use case of WISeKey.
Correct, because as the Internet of Things is expanding, I mean, we are talking now 20 billion objects already connected. This is growing exponentially. We're going to reach 1 trillion object by the year 2030. So these objects it's like mobile phones. I mean, mobile phones sends a lot of data, right? So the next generation on IoT devices are going to be acting as mobile phones. They're going to be sending data in real time to, for instance, in connected cars. The data will be on whether the car is functioning well, whether the maintenance has been done, where the driver is driving too fast. I mean, all this kind of information that eventually you need to know that will be sent directly by the device itself, because they have a microchip that includes the identity, and that microchip is connected to their NFC or Bluetooth or a 5G channel, and it will send the data to the device. Obviously, 5G is going to facilitate that because the connectivity is going to be lower. Before, it was too expensive to connect through GSM or any other ways. The data was too heavy, and obviously that was not possible. The 5th generation on the GSM is going to accelerate that because it's lower and faster. And the beauty of that is the data. I mean, this device, imagine you being able to collect real time of all the products that you produce if you are a manufacturer. This is a huge intelligence back again to the manufacturer that can be used to improve the product, to develop new versions of the product, to fix bugs. I mean, anything that could eventually need to be fixed. And the data aspect is going to be enormous. I mean, we already generated petabytes of data per day, and this is going to be incremental. And this is where AI comes in, because obviously humanly, you cannot analyze so much data. You need algorithms to help you in doing that. And that's why we made this strategic investment in AI companies, and now we are inserting that into the back end.
Great. Well, maybe shifting gears a little bit, less on the data communication side, but you also have an announcement with ARHT, which is a developer of holograms. So it sounds like that's more in the anti-counterfeiting market, where you buy a product on Amazon and you assume it's a legitimate product, but that's really not the case. There's tons of counterfeit products on Amazon. So I'd love to hear how ARHT and WISeKey are partnering and what you're doing there.
So actually, this is a very interesting partnership, because we are leapfrogging mature technologies that now can work together. Before was not possible, now it is. And obviously, this has many applications. The reason we started actually was on a very practical reason, because I needed to give a conference at the NASDAQ in November, and I cannot travel because the borders are closed, as you know. So I will be providing an investors meeting at the NASDAQ offices in Times Square, and I'm going to be projecting holographically in a hologram from Geneva. So I will be there, and I will be presenting, as we are doing now with Zoom, but we will be on 3D holographics to a level of quality that you won't even make the difference between physical presence and hologram presence. So what WISeKey is doing in that specific case is that the data that we are transferring to create my holograph image in New York, when I will be doing this, will be encrypted and digitally signed by my digital identity at the origin. So this could be used, and actually we're already working with some governments and here in Geneva with the UN, of being able to organize a hologram meeting where, let's say, head of state will sign a document without the need to travel. So you can convert that, or imagine a shareholders meeting where a CEO will present the company the shareholders, and they will make a vote. The beauty of this technology combining WISeKey with holograms is that the hologram becomes as legally binding as it will be the person traveling physically, and will be recognized by the law. So what we also did is applying this technology for product launches, like watches, the new generation of watches. I mean, the companies in the luxury industry spend a lot of money in product launches, high quality, and in our days they cannot do it, because the market is closed. So what we're working is doing the same holograms, ultra high quality holograms, but projecting a new product in a kind of showroom, which is virtual. The people at the destination are physically there. So imagine we beam the next Ferrari to China. The car will be, as it will be transported, because it will look exactly like if it is there, and the audience will be able to check out the car without to bother about sending the car or all the issues related to the logistics, right? So it's a moonshot into what I believe is going to be the future. The e-commerce platform you refer are trading, in many cases, products, and they are not being authenticated. So that's why counterfeiting and illicit trade is $1 trillion problem. 5% of the global economy is illicit trade. And very big e-commerce sites, without mentioning names, actually are part of the problem, because they are not taking the responsibility of making sure that everything they sell is authenticated. And therefore, when you buy something, it is your duty as a consumer to check that, which shouldn't be the case. I mean, they should be the platform they want and do that. So this technology obviously is available to them as well, because by putting a strong authentication in objects, they could imagine in the future to do a trade fair directly from the e-commerce platform through holograms in a total authenticated way.
Got it. Okay, that's great. And last, you just announced a joint venture with Arago to implement AI, artificial intelligence over of things, so AIoT. And I think it's called WISeAI. Maybe if you could just explain to investors what that joint venture means and what you'll be doing there.
So as we project our revenue over the next 5 years, as I said before, we believe that the revenue is going to be shifting from selling cybersecurity, identity management, and microchips into selling and analyzing data, so companies can take decisions based on data. It's like Palantir is in the United States, right? I mean, it is an AI cybersecurity company that uses AI to provide predictability analysis, so you know if you're going to get attacked or not. So the same thing we are doing. I mean, WISeKey is becoming like a mini Palantir as we are entering into this combination of cybersecurity, IoT, and data and AI. But we didn't have the AI component, so we made an investment into one of the leading AI companies in Europe. KKR many years ago put a very important investment in them, $50 million. Now the company is moving to the next phase. We are helping them to, it's still a private company, Arago, in Germany. And what we did through our investment is that we got an exclusive license agreement that we can use for AI IoT, what you say AIoT, artificial intelligence of things, which is the blend combination between artificial intelligence and IoT. So WISeKey is one of the first company, maybe actually is one of the, it is actually the pioneer on this new definition, which I think is gonna be recurrent over the next year, which is artificial intelligence of things. As things are getting smart, intelligent, and they need this kind of technology to maximize their value.
Great. Yeah, Palantir is a very interesting cybersecurity company, and I think it's a very good market to be in. And it sounds like this joint venture will help you better compete in that space as well.
Yeah.
You know, maybe as we're getting closer here to the end, I wanted to talk a few things about your U.S. presence, because you are a Switzerland-based company. And then we'll move on to Peter. I do have a few, financial questions for Peter, given that you just put out your first half of the year results. So starting with the U.S. side, maybe you could just talk about how you're expanding in the U.S. I know you have a lot, like you said, you're a few announcements here with European companies, but as you want to penetrate this market, building out a U.S. sales force, I think is something that you're working on. So it'd be great to hear how that's coming along.
So absolutely. So in order to enter into the US, obviously we needed a presence into the NASDAQ. So that December last year, we did our ADR2 on the NASDAQ. That has created a good momentum. The volume of ADRs being traded has increased substantially. We are trading 300,000 ADRs a day, which is a quite important amount for a Swiss company. Obviously, we're still an European company, so WISeKey will get much bigger once we become an American company, right? Which is my objective. And for that, what we started to do is to shift some of the leading technology teams and also sales organization into the United States. We recruit top executives from several companies. We just recruited a top executive from Disney. On sales, we recruited another top executive from OPSEC, which is a consumer brand protection company. He was the CTO there. They are building up the US team. Our objective is to have something like 30, 40 people in the US localized in different hubs within the next 3 to 4 months. And what we are doing also is looking into potential acquisition. I mean, WISeKey is sitting in a good cash reserve. We have no debt. The company has zero debt now. So it's in a very good shape. If you compare us with other companies doing IPOs, as we can grow very fast in a market which we believe is going to be 90% of our revenue. I mean, the Europe market is interesting in some countries like Germany, because Germany is doing the Industry 4 and they are fully entering into the Internet of Things and fourth industrial revolution. But it's a very fragmented market. You have to go country by country. When you enter into the US, you scale up very fast. So that's going to be our focus, Peter and I and the team, is to really have a very, very strong presence by the next reporting timeline.
Great. All right. Well, to wrap it up, I'd like, Peter, why don't we talk about some of the financials? You put out a lot of new results yesterday through the first half of the year. I think it would be really helpful as well, just to give investors an understanding. You have continuing operations, so you did sell off a big piece of your business earlier in the year. And so if you could just touch on that as well, and then talk to us about, what are the key metrics yesterday that you think investors should focus on from the results you posted?
Yes, thanks. Yeah, we did divest ourselves from the SSL business at the beginning of 2019, but there was a small amount of discontinued revenues in 2019. It was obviously major in 2018 because that is a commodity business, basically, which we're not really interested in. When you talk about key metrics, I think despite the lower revenues, we should be looking at the improved gross margin. We moved up from 38 to 41%. We reduced the net loss, so down from 7.9 to 7.3, with an 8% reduction. We do still continued investment in R&D, 2.8 million again in the 6 months. So we are focused on the future. Our cash balance has increased again. We're up from 16.6 to 17.4 million, and we'll be increasing that further in the months to come. As Carlos was saying, we've done important investments in sales and marketing personnel in the US and also in Germany. I think also one other point to show that we are controlling our costs well, we've reduced our G&A costs by over 1.8 million in the period. And we reduced our operating cash outflow from 5.9 million in the previous 6 months to 4.1 million this year. So I think there's a lot of positive information in the financials if people know where to look, and just don't take the top line reduction as the be all and end all.
Right. Yeah. So it certainly looks like COVID had a modest negative headwind on your revenue, and will have that same impact for the remainder of the year. But when you kind of go back to Carlos's discussions on some of these, a lot of these different market opportunities you have, it does seem like you're pretty well positioned for growth once we get past COVID.
Absolutely. There was some reduction in COVID. We've had clients been moving some of the orders out from Q2 to Q3. We also had in 2019 some unusual, exceptional revenues that were not repeated in 2020. So that takes up some of the loss that we've got, or reduction in sales that we've got. But yes, there's a lot more in the P&L and in the balance sheet that is more positive than just the top line.
I wanted to ask about gross margin as well. You said gross margin expanded to 41%. That's certainly lower than the typical cybersecurity company, but it's because of the fact that you make your own microchips and your own hardware. But it sounds like you have somewhat of a razor blade model where you continue to sell more software. So where do you see the mix or the gross margin trending, let's say longer term, if you have a longer term target over the next three plus years?
I think the more that we sort of include, as you say, the software into the business, certainly with the artificial intelligence, I mean, the margins we're talking about there are around the 80 to 85%. So the more mix that we can get in that, and that's where we're driving at with a combination of semiconductors and the security software, it will increase that margin dramatically. So we should be over the 50s into the 60s, I would imagine.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, we're running out of time here, but maybe Carlos, how would you? Is there any thoughts you'd like to leave investors with as we think about, WISeKey as an investment over, going forward?
So, just to say that cybersecurity is going to become very big. I think the Palantir IPO is actually very good for us because analysts and others are going to understand this new approach to cybersecurity, which is end-to-end, including AI. We have a very good trust model. I mean, many consumers worldwide, they will prefer eventually a company in Switzerland due to the neutrality than somewhere else where there might be other pressures. And I think WISeKey is in an amazing launchpad position to become a major player into this fourth industrial revolution, which is where we are entering. So I think we are very bullish for the future.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate the insight and the time you spent with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
All the best.
Take care.